Bob, an undertaker, came home with a black eye. His wife gasped, "What happened to you?" "You wouldn't believe the day I've had," Bob groaned. "I was called to a hotel where a guest had died in his sleep. When I got there, the manager pulled me aside and said they couldn't get him into a body bag because he had a huge." "Oh my," his wife exclaimed. "So I went upstairs and sure enough, there was this big guy on the bed with the most ridiculous boner. I figured I'd have to deal with it, so I grabbed it with both hands and tried to bend it in half." "That sounds awful," his wife said. "But how did you get the black eye?" Bob sighed. "Wrong room." Miss Brooks was conducting a fun riddle session with her class. She smiled and said, "All right, class, let's see who can solve this one." She continued, "I have a sturdy shaft, a sharp tip, and I come with a quiver." The students looked puzzled for a moment. Then Johnny confidently raised his hand and answered, "Arrow." A teacher of the earth science class was lecturing on map reading. After explaining about latitude, longitude, degrees, and minutes, the teacher asked, "Suppose I asked you to meet me for lunch at 23 degrees, 4 minutes north latitude and 45 degrees, 15 minutes east longitude." After a confused silence, a voice volunteered, "I guess you'd be eating alone." Two men at a bar had been enjoying a few drinks for the past couple of hours and were pretty drunk when one of them notices a beautiful woman sitting in the corner. One say to the other, "Geez, I'd really like to dance with that girl." The other man replies, "Well, go ahead and ask her. Don't be a chicken." So the man approaches the lovely woman and says, "Excuse me? Would you be so kind as to dance with me?" Seeing the man is totally drunk, the woman says, "I'm sorry. Right now I'm concentrating on matrimony, and I'd rather sit than dance." So the man humbly returns to his friend. "So what did she say?" asks the friend. The drunk responded, "She said she's constipated on macaroni and would rather in her pants." An 80-year-old lady was marrying for the 4th time. A newspaper asked if she wouldn't mind talking about her first 3 husbands and what they did for a living. She smiled and said, "My first husband was a banker. Then I married a circus ringmaster. Next was a preacher. And now, in my 80s, a funeral director." When asked why the 4 men had such diverse careers, she explained, "I married 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready, and 4 to go." As Jack was marrying Jill, his father gave him some advice. "Son, when I got married to your mother, the first thing I did when we got home was strip her, take off my pants. Then I gave them to your mother and told her to try them on, which she did. They were huge on her, and she said that she couldn't wear them because they were too large. I said to her, 'Of course they are too big for you. I wear the pants in this family, and I always will. Ever since that day, son, we have never had a single problem.'" Jack took his dad's advice and did the same thing to his wife on his wedding night. Then Jill took off her panties and gave them to Jack. "Try these on," she said. Jack went along with it and tried them on, but they were far too small. "What's the point of this? I can't get into your panties," said Jack. "Exactly," Jill replied. "And if you don't change your attitude, you never will." The terrorists took the men of the village hostage. Their leader, wanting to have some fun, called in the wives of the captured men. He blindfolded the women and ordered the men to drop their pants. Then he announced, "Each woman will touch every one by one. If she finds her husband, the couple will be spared. If she fails, both will be executed." The first woman stepped forward. Not this one. Not this one. Not this one. Husband. She was right, and both were spared. The second woman went next. Not this, not this, not this, not this. Husband. Again. Correct. The couple was freed. The third woman stepped up. Not this, not this, not this. Husband. And so it went, each woman correctly identifying her husband. Frustrated by how easy this was, the terrorist leader decided to join the lineup for fun. The next woman stepped forward. Not this one, not this one, not this one. Not from the village. Not this one. Husband. A journalist is writing an article about the trend for Scottish men to wear tights under their kilts. She walks up to an old man on the streets of Glasgow and asks, "Excuse me, do you ever wear a kilt?" "Aye, about once a week or so you'll catch me in a kilt." "Well, when you wear a kilt, do you wear tights underneath?" "Aye, every time I've worn a kilt for the past 3 years I make sure to put on tights." "I see. Why did you only start doing that 3 years ago?" "Well, lass, was about 3 years ago that my wife found a pair of tights in the back of my car." 3 friends married women from different parts of the world. The first man married a Greek girl. He told her that she was to do the dishes and house cleaning. It took a couple of days, but on the 3rd day, he came home to see a clean house and dishes washed and put away. The second man married a Thai. He gave his wife orders that she was to do all the cleaning, dishes and the cooking. The first day, he didn't see any results, but the next day, he saw it was better. By the 3rd day, he saw his house was clean, the dishes were done, and there was a huge dinner on the table. The third man married a girl from Canada. He ordered her to keep the house cleaned, dishes washed, laundry washed, and hot meals on the table for every meal. He said the first day he didn't see anything, the second day he didn't see anything either, but by the 3rd day, some of the swelling had gone down, and he could see a little out of his left eye. One Sunday morning, George burst into the living room, beaming with excitement. "Mom! Dad! I have incredible news! I'm getting married to the most beautiful girl in town. She lives just a block away. And her name is Susan." Later that evening, after dinner, George's dad pulled him aside for a private conversation. "Son," he began cautiously, "we need to talk. Look at your mother. She and I have been married for 30 years. She's a wonderful wife and mother, but she's never been particularly exciting in the bedroom. So, back in the day, I had a few flings." George's dad took a deep breath before continuing. "The thing is, Susan is actually your half-sister. I'm sorry, but you can't marry her." George was devastated. Heartbroken, he eventually stopped dating altogether for several months. About a year later, he returned home with renewed enthusiasm. "Mom! Dad! Diane said yes! We're getting married in June!" Once again, his father requested a private word. "George, I hate to tell you this, but Diane is your half-sister too. I truly regret putting you in this situation." Anger and frustration overwhelmed George. He stormed off and decided to confide in his mother. "Mom, I can't take it anymore," he exclaimed. "Every time I fall in love, Dad tells me the girl is my half-sister. I guess I'll never get married." His mother chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Oh, George, don't let your father's nonsense upset you," she said, smiling. "He's not really your father." A local bar prided itself on having the strongest man in the village behind the counter. They even had a standing £1,000 bet to prove it. The challenge? The barman would squeeze a lemon until every last drop of juice was gone. Then anyone who could squeeze out another drop would win the money. Weightlifters, arm wrestlers, and other tough guys all tried and failed. One day, a scrawny little man walked in. He was barely noticeable, wearing scratch glasses and a threadbare polyester suit that looked decades old. "I'd like to take the bet," he said in a quiet voice. The bar erupted in laughter, but the barman shrugged and grabbed a fresh lemon. He squeezed it with all his might until it was just a shriveled rind. Then, with a smirk, he handed it to the little man. The bar fell silent as the scrawny man clenched his fist around the lemon. To everyone's shock, a single drop of juice fell into the glass. He squeezed again, another drop, and then again, a third drop. The room was stunned. No one could believe their eyes. The barman, now thoroughly impressed, handed over the £1,000 prize. "Mate, what do you do for a living? Are you a lumberjack? A metal worker? A weightlifter?" The little man adjusted his glasses and replied with a faint smile, "I'm a tax collector." A man was walking down the street when he was approached by a ragged and disheveled homeless man who asked him for a few dollars to buy dinner. The man pulled out his wallet, took out a $10 bill and asked, "If I give you this money, will you spend it on beer instead of food?" The homeless man shook his head. "No, I gave up drinking years ago." "Will you use it to gamble instead of buying food?" the man continued. "Absolutely not," the homeless man replied. "I can't afford to waste money like that." "Will you spend it on greens fees at a golf course?" the man asked with a smirk. "Are you kidding me?" the homeless man exclaimed. "I haven't played golf in 2 decades." "Will you use the money to pay for a woman instead of food?" the man asked. "For $10? What kind of trouble do you think I'd be buying?" The homeless man shot back. "Well," the man said, tucking the $10 back into his wallet, "I'm not going to give you the money. Instead, I'm taking you home for a delicious dinner cooked by my wife." The homeless man was taken aback. "Won't your wife be furious with you for bringing me home? I'm filthy, and I probably smell awful." The man smiled and said, "That's exactly why I'm doing it. I need her to see what a man looks like after he gives up beer, gambling, golf, and women." A sailor reported for duty on a ship set to spend months at sea. On the first day, the captain takes the new recruit on a tour of the ship. He shows him the engine room, the helm, the quarters, taking him all over the ship. They end the tour in the captain's office, where the captain closes the door behind him and tells the sailor, "Oh, and one more thing. Seeing as we'll be away from land for months and there are no women on board, I know things can get lonely. So we have this arrangement with the Chinese cook. Say the word and I'll set you up." The young man is mortified. "I'm a straight man and I would never ever think of doing something like that." The captain nods and says, "Just so you know." A few months later, the young man meets the captain out on deck one evening and they get to talking. The captain asks about his service and how things are going, and just as they say their goodnights, he adds, "Oh, and just so you know, that offer with the Chinese cook still stands." The young man refuses politely. Few more months go by, and with no sign of going to shore anytime soon, the young sailor gets desperate and on a chance encounter asks the captain for a quick word. "Excuse me, sir, I was wondering if that offer with the Chinese cook is still available?" he asks. "Well, of course. I'll set it right up." The captain answers, "Just one thing. I feel really embarrassed about the whole thing. Could we keep it between us two?" The captain thinks for a second and say, "I'm afraid not. At least 7 people would have to know about it." "7? Why 7 people?" he asks. "Well, there's you, me, and the cook. That's 3 already." He holds 3 fingers up. "And the 4 guys that need to hold him down, because he really doesn't like it." Mr. and Mrs. Potato had 3 daughters who were as upstanding as they were lovely. One day, the first daughter came home and exclaimed, "I have an announcement to make." "And what might that be?" said Mother, seeing the obvious excitement in her eldest daughter's eyes. "Well," replied the daughter, with a proud but sheepish grin, "I'm getting married." The other daughters squealed with surprise as Mother Potato exclaimed, "Married? That's wonderful! And who are you marrying, eldest daughter?" "I'm marrying a russet." "A russet?" replied Mother Potato with pride. "Oh, a russet is a fine tater indeed." As the family shared in the eldest daughter's joy, the middle daughter spoke up. "Mother, I too have an announcement. And what might that be?" asked Mother Potato. Not knowing quite how to begin, the middle daughter paused, then said with conviction, "I too am getting married." "You too," Mother Potato said with joy. "That's wonderful. Twice the good news in one evening. And who are you marrying, middle daughter?" "I'm marrying an Idaho," beamed the middle daughter. "An Idaho," said Mother Potato with joy. "Oh, an Idaho is a fine tater indeed." Once again, the room came alive with laughter and excited plans for the future when the youngest potato daughter interrupted. "Mother Potato, I too have an announcement to make." "Yes," said Mother Potato with great anticipation. "Well," began the youngest potato daughter, with the same sheepish grin as her eldest sister before her, "I hope this doesn't come as a shock to you, but I am getting married as well." "Really?" said Mother Potato with sincere excitement. "All of my lovely daughters married. What wonderful news! And who, pray tell, are you marrying, youngest daughter?" "I'm marrying Dan Rather." "Dan Rather?" Mother Potato scowled suddenly. "But he's just a commentator.